The following episode contains details of an attempted suicide. If you or someone you know has had thoughts of suicide or expressed thoughts of suicide, please do not hesitate to call the Suicide Prevention Hotline by dialing 988, or you can text TX to 741-741. There are counselors standing by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are also counselors who speak Spanish. Listeners' discretion is advised. Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were Lifejacked.
What do you do when trauma, addiction, and abuse interferes with your ability to parent in the best way possible? My name is Dr. Rowe, and this is Lifejacked, the Resilience Podcast. Lifejacked is when an unfortunate or unplanned event happens to jack with your life. My guest for this week, Celia Landman, is a mindfulness educator offering support to teens and adults. She draws from experiences working with those impacted by trauma, addiction, and anxiety, and creates customized meditation, visualizations, and trainings to connect them to their wholeness. She was ordained by Thich Nhat Hanh as a member of the Plum Village community of Engaged Buddhism. She is also a certified trainer with the Center for Nonviolent Communication. Her new book, When the Whole World Tips, Parenting Through Crisis with Mindfulness and Balance, describes how to find balance while navigating seemingly impossible parenting situations. Celia believes one of the greatest supports for children in crisis is the parent's own emotional well-being, and that is something parents can control. Hi, Celia. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm really happy to be here. Happy we can have this connection.
Yes. So, Celia, tell us your own resilience story.
So the seed of this book that this experience I've written about was my own parenting struggle with my kids. When my daughter was 15, she was going through a really hard time at school. She had been bullied. She was clinically depressed. And that same fall, my son was hit in the head with a soccer ball. He had a concussion that wasn't resolving, so he wasn't in school. And then towards the December of that year, and I also want to just give a little warning that this is that I'm going to be mentioning some self-harm, that my daughter took an overdose and made a suicide attempt. So she was in the adolescent psych ward. He wasn't going to school, and my life was like, I didn't know where to go with this. It was really more than I had imagined.
Wow, and I couldn't even imagine what you went through within this experience, because as parents, we want to protect our children at all times. We don't want them to ever get hurt, right? I feel like sometimes when my boys go out, if I could just, wrap them in bubble wrap, that would be great to protect them.
Yeah.
So through all these through all these challenges, how did you manage to push through?
Yeah, it wasn't, the word push, it didn't feel like pushing through. It felt like sort of like a slow crumble to the ground, because what it was just, the big thing for me was being with the overwhelm, really knowing this is hard. This is something I cannot control. We can cognitively understand that we can't control the bodies and the lives of those we love. But then when it just, when impermanence smacks you upside the head, it's like, oh my God, that's true. It's really true. I can't control this. I can't control the cells in my kid's body. I can't make her happy. I can't make my son's brain better. And it was the ability to embrace what was there. It was the ability to really look at my own self, my own sense of where my balance was, and to accompany that, to show up for that despair, and know, I wasn't gonna be like Teflon. Nothing was gonna be what I thought it was.
So as going through this, do you have a support system? And if you did have a support system, how important do you think having a support system is?
Well, what one of the biggest support systems for me was my spiritual practice. So I'm a Buddhist, and for me, it's not. I don't use it like a religion. It's more like a way of life. It's a way of inquiry, of showing up and really getting very honest about life. So I could lean on a lot of the teachings that I had worked with for years. We work with these things that people think are really depressing, because in Buddhism the first noble truth is life contains suffering. And it's like, oh, that's such a drag. Who wants to hear that? But when something contains suffering, because it's non-dualistic, we know it contains something else too, the opposite of suffering. But it means things are going to be hard, and we don't get out without our quota, and we have no idea what our quota of suffering is going to be. So it's recognizing this is part of life. So instead of fighting and spending my time doing this kind of trying to dodge the suffering that's natural in the world and getting all twisted because it's wrong or it's bad or who caused it or where did it come from and how can I get rid of it, it's really going to a different place of like, okay, this is what's showing up for me. How can I support my own self? So I had a community, and I had my husband, but he was pretty inundated. This was really hard for him too. So it was really my spiritual community that showed up for me, the people I could talk to about this, who knew how to be with discomfort, who didn't try to silver line it, who didn't try to say, oh, well, it's not that bad, or, there's something just around the corner, or they didn't try to move me out of this. They just let me be with, and they accompanied me too with this. So that was really important to have that stability there.
I really love how you mentioned that you have no idea what your quota of suffering may be, because that couldn't be a truer statement because we don't, right? Once we get over that hump and we're at a good place and it feels good, and then all of a sudden, once again, Lifejacked, something smacks you in the face. You're like, what in the world? You didn't see that coming. And I know it's great to have a support system and people who uplift you, but really you're the one doing the work, right? So I want to ask, many parents, mothers, fathers, single parents, single fathers, single mothers, they struggle with work-life balance and the stress at work and then the stress of life. So for you personally, what has helped you manage this and push through those guilty moments that kind of come with the territory?
Well, I have kind of a lot to say about this because I can't balance. And I cannot balance the work, the expectation of what our society has with my own heart. And I also want to say that I don't know many people who can, and I don't believe that the system that we are operating in is designed to create a heartful balance for parents, for families, for women, for anyone who's parenting. I think this is the priority is to show up and work, in a capitalist system. What gets rewarded is the grind. The compassion does not get rewarded. The nurture, the protection, the care does not get rewarded. So I think when we have this expectation that we can balance in a system that is rigged, that's designed that there's almost no way we can balance this. I had huge problems balancing. I had my own business for 17 years, and then when I had kids, it was like, I can't do this. This is unrealistic. I can't. What's going on here? I don't have support that I need. We don't have free daycare. I didn't have a family close by. I didn't have anyone who can take my kids. It didn't feel nurturing. So for me, that wasn't something I could do. I see some people who do manage to do this, who don't have, who have less choice than I did about whether to stay. And they have to manage this. And I think every parent needs more support. They need more support from our society and our culture. And I want to say that everyone who feels guilty, that there's almost no way anyone can, there's no such thing as perfect in this system that we live in. There's so much that our children get from other people and not just from ourselves. I know in my own life, I got so much care and so much mothering from neighbors. I grew up, now it is a long time ago, but I grew up in an era where we just went from one neighbor's house to another. And I had all these different neighbors who the neighbors looked out for us. They all parented us. But I think we do not live in those kind of villages anymore. I mean, this was Massachusetts. It wasn't like a little remote village. But we're even more separate. We're even more siloed. Our time is more pressured.
I feel like you are exactly right that our families, we are in these individual silos because sometimes you don't know if you can trust people. And then while we're in our lives, each individual family, we have so many things going on that I don't know if you always have the time to get to know people well enough to feel comfortable, right, to build that village because everybody's busy, and you don't want to just leave your child and trust someone that you don't really know because you just never know what may happen. And so I want to ask, as you mentioned before, just even the struggles that you went through as a parent, a mom with your children, those things that you can't control. life is incredibly difficult at times, and it can be tough to hold it together yourself, let alone care for one or more children. So what tips do you give parents when they are going through a struggle or hardship?
Yeah, so the biggest kind of balancing and self-regulation piece I can offer is that showing up for whatever is there, showing up for your own self-care is huge, and prioritizing yourself, because you are part of your child's support system. Your well-being or ill-being transfers, what we're transmitting all the time. The more you're stable and you're able to find your own center, that's going to transmit to your kid. So it's knowing what's there, whatever is there, It can be boredom. It can be you don't want to do it. It can be overwhelm. It can be frustration, rage. It can be joy. Whatever's there, really showing up for it and accepting that with this open-hearted kindness, learning how to befriend what is in you is going to go a long way.
I know you talk a lot about mindfulness, and there may be people listening who may not necessarily know what mindfulness is exactly. But can you share what is mindfulness and how does being mindful help us in parenting?
So the definition I like is being aware of what is in us, what's happening in us, what's happening around us right now, but with this secret ingredient of kindness, because I can notice what's going on in me and what's going on around me and be the opposite of kind. I can be harsh and critical of everything that's happening in my mind, in my body, with those around me. So this is that quality of looking at something with these kind eyes. Oh, this is how it is right now. So it's giving us this little bit of space to unblend from what is happening so I see it. And the reason in parenting it's really important because I know that in my life, I used to think, I would be totally enlightened if it weren't for having children, if it weren't for having, a family. Like I would have just been, all so evolved. The people closest to us are the ones who can get us from 0 to 50 in a millisecond. They're our most reactive people. And we are so interconnected with them. So the more we have the ability to show up for our own emotional regulation with mindfully, so doing it without being harsh, without, I'm going to tamp this down in me and stuff it back, but with real care and awareness, that is a huge gift to your family. That's, having a parent who knows how to deal with their feelings and model that for the kids is an enormous, enormous gift.
And you've shared the importance of showing up for our kids, even in those overwhelming moments. So how does one show up, although they are extremely overwhelmed? Because I know that at times, if I'm overwhelmed, I don't think I have any more to give, right? I mean, of course, some kind of way I do find it, I guess a second wind or what have you, but I guess that's tied to resilience. But how does one who may not feel like they are resilient, how does one show up, even when they're for their kids, even when they're overwhelmed?
So it's like, I think of it like, the old kind of like teeter-totters, that used to sit on at recess. It's like, who needs the care right now? And it's like when you're overwhelmed, your side goes right down. Your side is on the ground. And even giving yourself that care of like, oh, honey, this is so hard. Oh, you are overwhelmed. Yeah, this is a lot. You're exhausted. This has been a real lot. Showing up like that for yourself gives a support and a foundation so that you can increase your capacity to be there for somebody else. So it's kind of like, my background is Buddhist, and the Buddha said, someone who's drowning can't save someone else who's drowning. He said, only when you're standing on the bank, on the shore, can you save somebody. So when you do those little practices of just acknowledging what is, you're getting yourself out of the water. Because if I just say, I got to push through, I can get deeper and deeper. But even if I take 10 breaths, I calm myself, I acknowledge what's happening for me. I'm putting myself on the shore. I'm giving myself some kind attention so I can do that for somebody else.
Do you mind sharing the motivation for writing your book, which, oh my gosh, it's such a wonderful book, and I hope that listeners out there, after listening to this episode, they get a copy of your book. But what is the motivation behind writing your book when the whole world tips parenting through crisis with mindfulness and balance?
My daughter, really, it was her ongoing struggles, because the first time, she made an attempt and was hospitalized, I had this idea like, oh, we just got to get through this. But then things went on, and over the years, there have been several attempts. There have been 3 attempts, and what I realized was it's nothing that's going to get over. This is going to be my path to be called upon like this, to have these real extremes in my life, and how am I going to do it? And I was also working at a residential treatment center for teens, so I was working with kids who were themselves were having all kinds of, they had trauma, they had, addiction, they had self-harm, all ranges. These were kids who weren't able to live at home, and they were age 13 through 18. So the more I'd be with these kids and talk to these kids, I realized, encountering them, how impacted they were by their parents, and also by their parents' anxiety around their own states, and how it made things worse. And I knew for me, when I got anxious and when I tried to control, it made things worse for me, but I didn't recognize how it impacted my child. But I could clearly see that being on the other side. So I wanted to offer some ways that parents can learn how to be and take care of themselves, because it's a hugely frightening thing when someone you love so deeply is doing something so scary, and you have no way of knowing that things will be okay, even that they will survive. So it's a practice. It takes a lot of work to get to a place where you can feel solid in the face of something so scary.
You have a chapter in your book called Not Abandoning. And there was a quote that you have that really stuck out to me. And you said, to support our children and recognize their difficulties, we must first be willing to courageously look at our own emotional landscape. That really resonated with me, and it was powerful. What can you tell parents as an extension of that statement?
Yeah, thank you. That the more you're willing to do the work of looking at yourself, you're going to be able to transform what's in you. Because what we do not transform, we transmit. And my Dharma teacher told me this over and over. We hold generational trauma. We hold habits. We all come from somewhere. We all come from ancestors, from history. We're all carrying something. The more clear we get about our own story, about our own life, then we have all the space that we can show up for our kids. Or we've modeled how to be with some big things, how to be with, I write in my book about transforming generational rage. You know, I come from a house where there was rage, and I was shocked to find that I raged at my own children. And I didn't believe, if you had told me that, I would have said that will never happen because I hate that. I hate anger. I hate rage. I didn't know what I was capable of. And it was a huge learning. And it's also been a gift and healing for all the generations of my family that came through that. I don't know how many that had that legacy of rage in them. Because so many parents, say, I can't stop this. I don't know how to do it. How do you stop being, like, some people can control their anger, but I can't. And yes, I was one of those people, so I'm going to tell you. And I am not exceptional. I am going to tell you that it's extremely painful because it's an addiction. It was an addiction for me, and it was an addiction for my father. But when we're holding on, whatever, it doesn't have to be rage either. It can be, zoning out in front of television every night. It can be tuning out in some way. We use a lot of things. We abandon ourselves, and then we teach those things to our kids, how to abandon ourselves. So the more we're there, the more we show up. We're not transmitting this. We're healing the legacies of our families in the present.
I love that. What we do not transform, we transmit. I would like for that to resonate with the listeners. What we do not transform, we transmit.
Mm-hmm.
So in your opinion, what are the best ways to build resilience?
So I think it's like it's a relationship, and we build relationships over time, and we develop trust. So the more we can do these practices where we're not abandoning, where I'm not going to the ice cream, where I'm not going to the screaming, angry fit of rage and storming out, or I'm checking in with myself. I'm listening. What do I really want? Is my heart really broken in this moment? Does it need kindness? The more I do that, the more I learn to have trust and have confidence that I'm going to be there for myself no matter what happens. So instead of having to have, the world be very small to be safe, the world, the unpredictable, wild world we all live in can continue, but I learn how to trust my own presence, that I am a source of care, I am a source of compassion, that I'm going to show up for me, and that I care. I care about my feelings. So over time, I think that builds this sense of I'm a dependable person for myself. I'm here for me, and I have my own back.
Wow. Celia, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate you. Please take the time to let everyone know how they can get a copy of your book or contact you if they are interested in parenting coaching.
Thank you. So the book is published by Parallax Press. Let me spell that for you. And you can find them at PARALLAX.org. And just search for When the Whole World Tips, Parenting Through Crisis with Mindfulness and Balance. And you can order it right there. You can also order it on my website, CeliaLandman.com, CeliaLandman.com.
Now, I know Celia mentioned that her daughter went through a process of attempting suicide, so I just want to mention, if you are having suicidal thoughts, no matter how much pain you're experiencing right now, you're not alone. Many of us have had suicidal thoughts at some point in our lives. Feeling suicidal is not a character defect, and it doesn't mean that you are crazy or weak or flawed. It only means that you have more pain than you can cope with right now. With time and support, you can overcome your problems, and the pain and suicidal feelings will pass. You can dial 988, and you can talk to anyone in either English or Spanish. That number again is 988 for the Suicidal Prevention Hotline. Or you can text TX to 741-741. And you can text anyone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Celia, any last words of encouragement to the listeners?
So I'm just going to share with you something that I have taped to my computer that I see every day, and those words are, take back your power to make the life you want. And the life I want includes compassion, care, and gentleness for myself and others. So please take back your power to offer those, whatever is in your heart, to yourself.
Wonderful. Celia, I wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance. Please take care.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Lifejacked, the Resilience Podcast with your host, Dr. Rowe. Are you interested in having your business or service advertised on this podcast for thousands of listeners to hear? Then please send me an email at lifejacked@email.com if you are interested in becoming a sponsor of one of my episodes. And remember to live, laugh, love, learn, and then repeat. See you in the next episode.